ألا من كنت مولاه فهذا علي مولاه اللهم وال من والاه وعاد من عاداه.
My first experience with Imam Hussein is a bit of a story, and I'll try to tell it in brief. I had almost no experience with Imam Hussein, pretty much at all. There isn't a big awareness in the Jewish community about the post-Quranic figures. So I was invited to a madrasa to give a talk, and Imam Hussein was one component of a talk. It was right before Ashura. I get there, and I only know one story at this moment about Imam Hussein that I've been told from a friend of mine, an imam, and it's a beautiful one. So I was going to tell the story to this group of children at the madrasa, and that was about all I could do. The story was one that I found to be sort of about that moment where Imam Hussein, as a young lad, jumps in the back of his grandfather, Prophet Muhammad, and the Prophet Muhammad doesn't get up until he climbs off, which I think is such a beautiful. I've used that in my own prayer service, like my kids are jumping and running around and I'm getting like nervous and annoyed with them, or I'm in the synagogue and there's loud children about, trying to hold on to that story, which is a beautiful like cross-religious moment about what's the purpose of religion, which is probably to educate our children in it and to show a sense of the humility before God and a sense of we shouldn't get angry, basically, when things don't go our way on a very basic level. So I told that story. It seemed to go down well, and then someone in the back, an older student in the back of the room, got up and said, "What are you doing here? You Jew, what are you doing here?" And wasn't expecting this. And I'm sorry for being in any level political, but hopefully here we can speak sensitively about these issues, and I'll try to do it. And he said, "You people, you Zionists, are like King Yazid." Now, I had no idea what he was talking about, no concept of who King Yazid was, no real understanding of the whole moment at Karbala at that stage. And he had this really angry moment where I was being compared to someone I had no idea who it was. He was then sort of removed from the audience. Everyone apologized. They said, "Looks like we can move on from that." And at that moment, I realized, like, to really engage with that question, I had better discover a little more depth to the story, because I was being compared to a character I knew nothing about. So I went off that very day and began a little bit in-depth research about Imam Hussein, the Battle of Karbala, King Yazid, some of the injustices that he had done, and then tried to have a deeper understanding about it, which hopefully will be an aid in dialogue. The way I found to really engage with the history of any religion, and particularly about Imam Hussein in particular and Karbala, is really to speak to people. Lived religion, I think, for all of us is really what makes it so alive. It's one thing to read it from a book, and actually a friend of mine has given me a children's book about Imam Hussein, which I found really helpful. But the best way, I think, is to talk to people who are living their faith, to talk to what it's like for someone to experience during Ashura, during Muharram, what it is to be sitting there and telling, remembering, in some level living in the imaginative state of the story itself. And having that realized is the best way of doing it. And the best way of doing it is to engage with people who are feeling the story on a daily basis, in their prayers, in their lives, in their telling to their children. So I asked people I work with, people at the local mosque, imams, friends, who is Imam Hussein for you? And I think that begins a quite intricate, wonderful, complex story that has sort of changed my understanding of me personally, but also my own faith as well. Because a story that's there about fighting against injustice, of a small group who stands up against the tyranny of the many. These stories echo throughout our religious traditions and give hope and light to all of us who see ourselves as reaching towards something which we can't quite articulate in this material world, can't quite articulate in a secular sense, but feel deeply as part of who we are, and adds actually a lot to my own faith. That's a powerful message for us for today. All the times in this world where I feel like I wish I could do that, stand against injustice. There's a story at the core of Karbala which says no matter what, it's a worthwhile investment, even if it doesn't become seen in my own lifetime. If a story persists about those who stood up against injustice, remains, that has an effect. In the same way, I mean, far be it from me to make any comparison between standing up against injustice now or personally with Imam Hussein, but as a model, as a model for the still small voice, as they say in the book of with the prophet Elijah, the Kol Dama Daka in Hebrew, the still small voice that always stands up against the forces of evil and says, here we are, here God is, here we stand with those who seek justice.